Welcome to the I Am the Worst Parent Ever podcast with Nicole Merritt and Dr. Robert Zeitlin.
Hey, Nicole.
Hey, Robert. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good, thank you. I'm kind of feeling a little bit just guilty about something. So can I tell you?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so it just happened yesterday with one of my children, and then I think back to another time when it happened with another. But I feel like I'm constantly telling my children to stop crying and to kind of like move on, get over it, toughen up, like you know, just chill. stop leading with being so emotional and dramatic. I know that you'll probably tell me that's the exact wrong thing I should do. I need to embrace and accept their emotions so that they do the same. I need to label it. I need to name it. I got that. But instead, I tell them to stop because, you know, a bumped finger and like, you know, a tiny scrape or whatever it is not worth all the dramatics, is it?
Yeah, man, you put me in a tough spot. So, first of all, I think you're also the parent who can not feed into the crying. I also picture you on purpose, sort of not ignoring, but saying, you know, kid falls, sort of bangs their nose. And you're like, you're okay. You know, they kind of look at you and should I cry about this? And you're like, no, I think you'll be fine.
Yes, I do that.
You're also that parent. Should you tell your kid to stop crying? You know, I've thought a lot about boys and how boys grow up to be men. And I think there's a part of that sort of pushing down of emotions that's really not good for boys. I don't know in terms of girls and in terms of, you know, sort of, you're basically calling your daughter a drama queen, you know, in that moment, right? And it's like, I don't know. I've been in the situation, maybe you have too, where we've not given enough attention to something that seemed like maybe they hurt themselves. And I'm not going to call my wife out on this, but there was a time where we both you know, enough with the ankle stuff, and you know, she'll just limp around and she'll be fine. And then a week later we found out it was broken.
Right. And so I've had the same exact thing happen to my daughter. I think she was 3 or 4 at the time, maybe even a little younger. And I am a total admitted helicopter parent. I don't let them climb up the slide at the park, but she was for a hot second. And then I think it might have been even me calling her to get down that got her to get down, and she fell on her wrist. And she was screaming and crying, and I'm like, you're fine, you just fell, you're okay, you know, get over it. And she went to school, you know, for the next, you know, week. She's doing PE. Come to find out it was broken. And I was just like, you know, deal with it, toughen up. I felt really, really horrible about that. But that's my go-to. It's just I want you to stay positive and yes, you got hurt, but all right, we all get hurt. You know, right. It's gonna happen throughout your life, and this is just the beginning of that.
And boo-boos heal, you know, and feelings heal, and you move on. And a mom just told me yesterday a story about watching her son from afar, and he's probably 4th grade, and seeing this other kid knock him down and him get really upset. And you know, that triggers the mama bear in so many of us that want to rush out there and take the other kid by the neck. But it's how are your kids going to learn how to get back up and how to self-soothe and manage themselves and find help if they need it, you know, if we're
right.
always going to be jumping in.
Right. Right. I mean, I think you have to, it either has to be you yourself balancing out. You can, in my opinion, you can say, all right, you don't need to cry about that, little Johnny, or you know, is there a better way we could make you feel better about this? You know, with the more positive, labeling your emotions. Okay, accept that you're sad. I think you can balance that out. Or maybe you and your spouse kind of, you know, each have your role, or you know, you switch if you're both present when something happens. You know, this time daddy can be the okay, you don't need to cry, and mommy can be the let's see how you feel, and then you can switch it out. I mean, you know, I think there has to be that balance within the home to raise a well-rounded child.
I think that's huge. I think the idea of switching, which I don't think happens, I haven't seen it happen in a lot of couples where they kind of like, you know, can step in and out of those roles, the nurturer or the lifeguard or the, call it the, you know, the psychologist, like you'll be fine, that part, you know. But that's, if you can do that, that's really cool, because then kids don't grow up with the idea of, you know, the you'll be okay voice is always attached to the mommy. And so if I'm a girl, I'm going to grow up that way. Or if I'm a boy, I'm going to find someone who will be a mommy like that to my kids. Like you can actually, I guess, degenderize those roles. And I think that would be really helpful.
Right. I think sometimes naturally it just happens. You know, I spend all the day with my children. So then, you know, when my husband gets home and he hasn't seen them, here I am frustrated and reacting, don't cry. Whereas he's more open to it, you know, because he hasn't seen them all day and he wants to hear what's happened. Or the same if he comes home and has had a more stressful day, you know, and I can sense that and I can step in and be the other person. So I think that it's beneficial to your children for sure, and to for your marriage. You know, if that person needs to, you know, kind of not be that person because they're not in that headspace to be that, you know, kind of consoling and empathetic, then that's your turn.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And listening to ourselves and giving ourselves space, like saying, it's the end of the day, I'm fried, I'm just not going to step into this and have an argument with my kid, or being able to have enough mental energy left, which is sometimes not in your control, to be able to recognize, oh, my spouse is not going to be able to handle this right now. You know, it's
right.
bath time and I know what these kids are going to be serving up, and this is just a formula for disaster.
Right.
But sometimes I think, you know, what do you do when you just don't have, neither you have the mental energy to deal with it, just someone's got to like step up and do it. Right.
And every conversation we're having is tying back to another conversation that we had. That's that persistence. I mean, for most people, and I would hope and pray that most people, like, you know, their children are their life. Your goal is going to be to persist and persist and persist until, and even beyond, I was going to say, until you've raised well-rounded, intelligent, great children, but they're always going to be your baby. You know, you're always going to be wanting more for them. So it's when you can say, my goal is to live a life where I can be proud of how I have raised my children. Then I think that's your motivator, the persisting.
So I love these conversations with you because you always put me on the spot. Like, you're going to tell me not to yell at my kids, but eventually we get around to, oh, now I thought of it. Now here's the answer. It's like, how do you take a step back and remind yourself why you're doing what you're doing? You know, what's the purpose? Like, is your goal to raise, you know, strong soldiers impervious to pain, or is your goal to raise well-balanced kids? If you're raising a son and you're trying to be conscious about him having a little bit more, you know, emotional awareness, like, is that something that you want to emphasize, or is that part of the agenda or not?
Right. And you mean you just have to be realistic. Like in life, our children are going to get talked to in a way that they don't like. Not to say that should be the norm in your household. Absolutely not. But if you make the mistake of yelling or talking in a way that you shouldn't, maybe one day when your 15-year-old son gets yelled at by the boss, who is just ticked off because whatever, the order came in wrong, he'll be like, oh, I remember when dad did that, and, you know, he didn't mean it. And this guy's probably just frustrated because dad was frustrated, you know, and they might just associate that and be able to handle situations like that a little better.
Yeah, I think that's totally true. And another reason, like we've said before, to raise your kids with all of it, you know, and to be real with your kids when you're tired. You know, I think if we were exactly the way we wanted to be all the time, we would actually be kind of depriving our kids of those opportunities to have like some perspective when their boss yells at them when they're 18, you know?
Right. And it just got me, I mean, you know, I feel like people will be like, you know, this is the I Am the Worst Parent Ever podcast, and you're not talking about how you're the worst. The problem is, I think we have this, I don't know, this general big, you know, the worst is, you know, the parent that's drinking and smoking in front of their children and doing all these bad things. And that's not it on an everyday level. If you're a good person trying to raise good people, these smaller things that you are doing are going to feel like ginormous. It is going to feel like, oh my goodness, did that just ruin my child for life? But you just have to just have that perspective, like you just said, that everything we're doing, the good and the bad, it is all benefiting our children.
It's all exposure. It's all life lessons. It's all, if you have that bad moment and then you just like lock yourself in your bedroom and you cry your eyes out because you've now destroyed your child's, childhood, like, I don't think that's why people are listening to this podcast called I Am the Worst Parent Ever. I think it's because they're looking for some perspective on those moments where we all feel like you are the worst parent ever. And there has to be some reason that this is happening. I know I'm a better parent than my parents were. So like, it can't be the worst parent ever.
Right. I think that you have the mindset that I'm always going to improve. And I'm always going to learn from what I did yesterday or what I did 5 minutes ago. And then my child is going to do just that. And you just made me think of something. My daughter once asked me, where do you go to school to become a mommy? And I said, well, there's no like mommy school. I said, but you learn from your own mother. And I said, and I put this, there's a Mother's Day article I wrote that Her View from Home is going to be publishing. I wrote it a while ago on my own blog called Dear Grannies. That's what my kids call my mom. And it's about how I went to the best school in the world because she was my mom. And so that's where your whole life, you're going to be picking up things from the school of mom, if you decide to become a mom, and if you don't, great. But that's where you can find it. And I just thought that was so cute that she thought that there was a place that you go and they teach you. And my goodness, sign me up if there is, because it helps sometimes.
Yeah, there is no manual and there's no mommy school, right?
Right.
All you got is us. You got I'm the Worst Parent Ever podcast.
And that's why we're here for you.
But like what I just said before, and I felt like I blamed my parents. I'm like, I can't be the worst parent ever. My parents were worse than me. But like, even if you grew up in a rough situation, like at some point, like your daughter will grow up and recognize the good and the bad and the pretty and the ugly and all the stuff that she wants to keep and she wants to throw out and she wants to try different. I feel like the way we raised our kids gives them a chance to actually, a little bit more of a buffet, a little bit more of a chance of like, well, dad was like this, but mom was like this. And like, I want to be like this. And I want this piece from that and this piece from that. And it's like, that would be my goal. Like if I was to go back and actually have a plan, which I don't feel like I had a clear plan, like to expose my kids to as much of it so that they're actually training to be parents the way they want to do it and the way they would choose.
I love the idea of a life buffet. Like, how much does a ticket cost? You grab this from here and you grab that from there, and you want to go back to that station, go grab some. I wrote back when I started the blog, I think it was like, grab a little goodness, like wherever you can. So like, grab some here. Oh, that table, look what they have is good. Go grab something from that guy, and just pick it up wherever you can.
Yeah, so I think life is a buffet, and I think growing up in our families, the families we grew up in and the families we're creating are buffets. I think the goal is to not have the kid who's sort of locked into the chair worried about going up for another serving. Like, right. How do you raise kids with enough wherewithal where they're going to ask their teacher a challenging question or, dare to try out for the team? How do they find that persistence or the courage or there's other superpowers I always talk about and you talk about, like, how do we raise them so they can, try as much as they can at the buffet?
Right. But at the same time, you want them to get up, not push anybody out of the way to get to the front, right? Let the girl
not hog all the brownies.
Right. So That's a lot to ask. I gotta get you to want to get up for the buffet. Make sure you don't want it too much that you overstep your boundaries. So
Right.
therein lies the challenges of
well, first you have to raise kids that you can actually feel proud to take to a restaurant and
true.
get out of your house in the first place and not turn around in the parking lot like, that's it, we're going home.
Right. But you need to have enough self-awareness and not listen to your lizard brain to be like, even if the company does not enjoy, the family that I have at present with toddlers and spills and noise, that I still have a right to be at that buffet.
Yeah, you've written a couple times really eloquently about stares and comments and attitude you've gotten from other people out in the
And I just say, this is us. This is the traveling circus show. So either grab a seat or just keep going.
I'm sure there's another show down the line that you'll enjoy more.
Right. Exactly. If you don't catch mine, you can catch, Salad.
You can go home, turn on the cable station with, the perfect family. Sorry you didn't catch it at the market today.
Right. Exactly.
That's
awesome.
This
is fun. All of our chats are so fun. I love
yeah, I love the life buffet idea. That's awesome.
Yes. It's so cool to and that's what I think for like the listeners too. Like it's so cool to just get different perspectives, and you and I, it's funny how everything kind of connects at the end. And I think if you do that with your spouse, or you do that with your coworker, or your parent friend who is the mom of the kids you have over for the play date, even if you feel differently about things, whether it's a parenting decision or whatever it is, there is a place to come together and connect and find a united front.
Definitely, and parents need that, and let's do that more.
Yeah, definitely, totally with you on that.
Cool. Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you for listening to the I Am the Worst Parent Ever podcast. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss an episode.